ABC or APC? Confused? Then tune in. In today's podcast, we'll be discussing all the reasons why I converted from an anything but Chardonnay to always pour Chardonnay. Welcome to the podcast Wine Matters. I'm your host, Wendy Laureti, the accidental winery owner of Saddles Creek Wines. In this podcast, I invite you to join me as I share with you what I believe is the true meaning of loving wine, and that is to bring people together. I'm absolutely no wine expert, though I am a wine lover. I love to learn and explore all things wine, how it's made and how it is best enjoyed. What I've discovered along the way is the more I learn, is the more I enjoy and appreciate it. So I'd like to share with you what I've learned along the way, debuff some of the myths, but most importantly, I invite you along to learn with me. To support our learning, I'll be inviting way more knowledgeable people than myself to share their expertise, their love of wine, and why wine matters to them. I hope to introduce you to all the reasons to love wine and all the interesting and great people of the Hunter Valley and the greater wine community. So on that note, let's pour a glass of wine and talk Wine Matters. Cheers. Welcome to episode 4 of Wine Matters, and with me today is Deb.
Hi.
Hey, Deb.
Just Deb today.
We'll discuss that a little bit later as well, why I do love Chardonnay and why I converted, honey.
Okay. So talk to me. We've already poured something in our glass because it is Wine Matters, and we need to talk about what's in my glass first.
Okay, what's in our glass is a very big pour of Alessandro Chardonnay. So let's just get that off the table because we have to discuss it because it is a big pour. Now, tell me, why is it a big pour, Deb?
Because Wendy poured it.
But what you just said to me, it's too big because blah, blah, blah.
Okay,
never heard this before.
I am probably a person that will never, I am the person that will never ever top your glass up to the top.
Well, not in
to
this
the rim.
glass, definitely.
Definitely not. And even if it wasn't in this glass, I just like to pour probably just a little bit less than this.
So not 400 mils, maybe 150 mils.
Yeah, probably more like 700 mils in this glass.
But it is a big glass.
And the reason is first of all, I want to swirl the glass.
You can't swirl. It might spill. We don't want to spill.
Okay, so I'm going to swirl the glass, and you can see here I'm having a little bit of difficulty like swirling that glass. So I like to just put a little bit in. The other thing that I'm going to note with this Chardonnay, it's come straight out of the fridge and it's really, really cold. So I want to warm it up, and if the bigger the pour, the longer it's going to take to come to temperature. So that's my other reason why.
Well, talking temperature, it's not one of my top reasons why I love Chardonnay.
Okay.
Or converted me, but since we're talking temperature, what's our ideal temperature?
Not this cold.
It's very cold, isn't it?
And so most fridges work at about 4 to 6 degrees. And so if you think about when you pour your wine straight from the fridge, it's way too cold. Chardonnay needs to be about 10 degrees to really allow those flavors to come out. And I think that's one of the things that people make the mistake of, is that they drink their Chardonnay too cold, and therefore it tastes almost bitter even because they're not tasting and they're not smelling the aromas and they're not tasting the flavors of the wine. So first thing is, with your Chardonnay, make sure that it is out of the fridge for 15, 20 minutes, or take it out of the fridge, pour a little bit in your glass, warm it up. And by the time you get to the next pour, to the second, top up, then it's come to temperature a bit more.
Great tip. Thank you, honey.
No, you're welcome.
That's awesome. Now let's get on to the reasons why I converted from anything but Chardonnay, and I truly was.
Yes.
I truly was. I came into the winery as a new owner, and really...
You're a savvy bee drinker.
I was a savvy bee drinker, and I had really...
No judgment.
Not enjoyed... Well, I didn't really understand Semillon, but we're talking Chardonnay, and just Chardonnay. And the depth of the complexities and the depth of characters in a Chardonnay. To now, it's my favourite drink.
So you said before ABC versus APC.
PC.
Okay, so
I would not drink it because
ABC stands for anything but Chardonnay, and a lot of people would come, and that became a well-known saying of anything, pour me anything but Chardonnay when they were asked. And that was something that was touted around for a very long time. And that was because Chardonnay went through a bit of a bad rap there for a while. I've always been a Chardonnay fan. And let me tell you, there's good Chardonnay and there's bad Chardonnay.
There is. It's like
yeah, but especially with Chardonnay, it becomes a lot more pronounced if it's not a good Chardonnay. And because there's oak maturation involved. And that really does have a big influence on the taste of Chardonnay. Chardonnay is one of those grapes that winemakers love to play with because you can do so many things with it.
And I think that's what I've started to love about it, is that I can have a very, very light Chablis style Chardonnay that is very lightly oaked, if oaked at all, right through to a full-bodied, buttery Maria Reserve Chardonnay that has so much depth of flavour and characters that, it's quite diverse.
And they're my 3 reasons of why I love Chardonnay so much. 1 is because of the diversity of how it can be made. 2, it's such a food-friendly wine and it goes across many different cuisines. And we'll talk about that in a second. And 3rd is...
I can say it.
Yeah.
I can say it. And we laugh, but it is true. People will be put off when you can't say names. You have to learn it. And if they get embarrassed or feel silly because I just can't say it, like it took me quite a while to learn how to say Alianico. Now I'm all over it.
You nailed that.
But yeah, so it is such an easy, it's kind of Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Or looking for the Chardonnay. Where's the Chardonnay section?
Yeah.
It is so easy.
So we launched a pick pool last week, remember? A couple of weeks ago, rather. And it's a white grape variety that is, very, very new to Australia. And a lot of people can't pronounce it. And it can be a turn off. If you can't pronounce it, it makes it harder to sell it.
It is absolutely. It's not, it makes you pause. Doesn't it?
Because no one likes to feel silly.
Or confidently asks for it if you see it on a menu.
Yeah.
Especially with the pick pool. Like, in Australia, we do love to anglicise or simplify things like
Shardy.
Like Monty Pulciano to Monty. Or, Chardonnay to Shardy. And we changed it to pick pool because it just seems so much easier than spelling it the French way that looks quite complex. But that's just what we do because we would like to make things easy. But anyway.
Speaking of all things French, so, the home of where Chardonnay is from, I had the pleasure a few years ago of going to Beaune, which is where Chardonnay is grown. Obviously, Champagne is made from, we spoke about that in our previous episode, is also grown in the Champagne region. Chardonnay is grown in the Champagne region, but the home of where it's made as a table wine is in Burgundy. So a white Burgundy is Chardonnay.
Well, that was one of my questions I was going to ask at the end of the episode was how many different names are there for the Chardonnay? Like, I think that's one of the confusing things, especially if you're traveling overseas, you might see Chablis and not realize that that's a Chardonnay, or like you just said, a white Burgundy, but not realize that that's a Chardonnay.
Yeah, that's because in places like France, with their appellation, they'll name it after, they don't necessarily name after the variety. So in Australia, you look at a bottle of wine and you see that the variety is pronounced. Yeah, where in, you go to France, it's Bordeaux.
Because it's a region. The region comes first over the varietal.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome information because that has always been confusing for me.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, I love learning.
Chardonnay is one of the most widely planted white wine grapes in the world. So it'll grow anywhere. And that's what's magnificent about it is it does grow everywhere. But because it does grow everywhere, you will find so many different styles of Chardonnay. And it's, like I said, it's a winemaker's playhouse, really, because you can do so many things with Chardonnay to make it taste so different. And at the moment, you look at Settlers, there's 6 Chardonnays on the list.
Unbelievable.
And they all taste so different.
They do.
And so the biggest thing to start with, has it had oak maturation? And personally, I think Chardonnay needs a little bit of oak. It needs some oak. And then when I first started here in the wine industry, I was working down on Deasy's Road, and the winemaker at the time, Max, he was my neighbor, and it's like, come on, let's have a Chardonnay. It's 5 o'clock. Yep, excellent. And then he's like, I want you to try this Chardonnay and that Chardonnay. It's grown the same way. The only difference is that this wine has been matured in a French oak barrel, and this wine has been matured in an American oak barrel. And to me, that was like the start of the, I guess, curiosity of how the different flavors of oak really impact the taste of the wine. So the region where it's grown will also influence how it tastes, because cool climate wines will have a lot more, they're a lot leaner, they'll have a lot more mineral characters, and the acidity is different to, say, a Hunter Valley wine. So we get a lot more ripeness here in the Hunter Valley, so you can expect much more tropical melons and fruit characters, as opposed to cool climate, which might have more stone fruit, nectarines, characters. So the flavor profile of the wine changes, the aromas of the wine changes. So now you can see that this wine is starting to come to temperature a bit more now. And so when you're talking about Chardonnay from different regions, you're going to have a different flavor profile. And then you get into the winery and then how it's made. So you can do things like wild yeast. Wild yeast will have a different flavor profile than inoculated yeast. And then you can barrel ferment. You can have, and that's where we actually, kick the fermentation process off in the barrel. You can have a combination. So you can, put some in steel tank and ferment it. You can then transfer it to barrel. And then you can also do what's called malolactic fermentation, which gives it a secondary
So you can see why they love it.
Yeah. So there's so many different ways that you can play with Chardonnay in the winery. So things that it will influence is the fermentation and then the maturation.
Maturation meaning how long?
What it's matured in the oak barrel. So you can use French oak, American oak, you can use small format barrels, you can use large format barrels. And so the larger the format, the less influence there is in oak. Now there's also a technique, and this is where we come back to why APC started, is because Chardonnay got really popular years ago. And so when something gets really popular, we then try to work out how we can make it en masse. And so then the technique comes of what we call tea bagging, where we actually, instead of putting the wine in the oak barrel, we put the oak barrel into the wine, like a tea bag, right? And so, French oak barrels cost a lot. Think about, so this is my rule when it comes to buying wine. I'll always spend more on a Chardonnay and a Pinot Noir. And Chardonnay, can cost, and I know the numbers have gone up because of export rates and things with oak, but, you can expect to put on another $5 to $10 a bottle in costs, so therefore, when you think about a Semillon that's picked, put in a steel tank and then bottled, I would expect to pay more for Chardonnay because of that maturation process.
Yes, yeah.
And so then we would take the maturation process where I can put a Semillon out on the shelf, pretty much as quick as it's made, where if I'm getting a well-made Chardonnay, it's been matured in oak for anywhere to 6 to, say, 9 months, sometimes 12 months with some producers. Around that 6 to 9 months is about that sweet spot.
So the winemaking style and the approach really impacts the end product.
And then if we use, and the reason why I'm telling you this is that if you go to the back label of a wine, these are the things that will get written on the back. So there's things like whether they've used new oak or seasoned old oak. And so that also impacts the flavor. So for people that don't like Chardonnay, it's probably because, one, they may have had a bad Chardonnay and not a well-made Chardonnay. And then the other reasons is because of the oak balance in it as well. So when you're starting out, you might like a much more fruit forward with lighter oak flavor influence, where for me, I love a big buttery style of Chardonnay, but I still like it well made, because sometimes you see producers that might put too much oak and they've used too much new oak in there, which might appeal to certain people. But again, we're all individual.
I think that's a really good takeaway, because everyone will have their own palate, and everyone's palate changes over time as well.
Absolutely.
It evolves. And starting off, like anything, starting off and just being open to exploring. So starting with those lighter styled wine, and then leaning in as you go along and trying the more heavily oaked Chardonnays and things will be quite a nice journey to take. I think quite a good. It's an interesting exploration. And that's really one of my number one reasons why I love it, is because I can have a Chardonnay for any occasion. I can choose a Chardonnay that I don't have to have with food, that I can just enjoy by the pool on a Sunday afternoon, versus a Chardonnay that I can have with quite a full-bodied dinner.
Yeah.
And it just
matches beautifully. It's the red wine of white wine.
It is, isn't it?
You know, that's how far you can take it.
With the Maria, one of the things I thought, this is a winter wine in a way, because we were talking about that the other day. Are there seasonal wines?
Yeah.
And some ways they are, aren't they? Because the more full-bodied it is, the more you, like you said, pair balance with balance.
That brings me to my next point of when I see people evolve their palate with Chardonnay, because food has a big influence on how to enjoy. So temperature, number one, and food is the other way, because often when I see people that'll come in for wine tastings, they're not eating anything. So a more fruit-forward, lighter style of Chardonnay is going to be easier on their palate, but then all of a sudden when they have it with the right foods, they're sitting there going, oh my God, that's actually my favorite wine. And I've seen that so much.
It makes such a big difference. Such a big difference. You can have a sip of wine, or you can have the wrong pairing, like the wrong cheese, for example, with the Chardonnay, and you just go, then you match it perfectly with it. You know, where you should be sitting at it, and it's a whole different story, isn't it?
The French do that so well. They have, you know, terroir as far as their food of the region goes with the wine. You know, Chardonnay, they have a beautiful brie with that. You know, a nice creamy soft brie is a lovely pairing. If you go to Burgundy, coq au vin is their, you know, staple dish around that region.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of starting with the wine and then pairing the food to match it.
Yeah,
it depends where your love is, isn't it? If you're a real big foodie person, of course you're probably going to start with the food and then educate yourself around what pairs best, you know, wine.
Okay, so my rules with and there's no rules, it's just a guide of what I would pair with different foods. Coming into the warmer months, we eat a lot of seafood. So for example, the style of wine, like if you gave me oysters, I would probably reach for a Chardonnay over other variety.
Because you're an APC.
I'm always pour Chardonnay.
Always pour Chardonnay.
But the style of Chardonnay that I would look for would perhaps be, if I was doing freshly shucked oysters, I would go for something that was maybe cooler climate, and I would look for something that has that nice freshness to it, so high acidity in the wine. If I was then going to do lobster, I would go for more of a richer style of Chardonnay.
Yes.
So rich doesn't necessarily mean big oak either. That Maria Chardonnay was that you're talking about, which I love that wine so much, had a lot of richness because of a couple of things. It had batonnage, so that's another winemaking technique that we can use. So we literally stir up the lees in the bottom of the barrels, which gives it a lovely creamy complexity. So it had gentle batonnage in that winemaking process, and then we aged it. So it was a good wine to start with. We used French oak, and we used a balance of
probably about 9 months in French oak, wasn't it?
And then we had a new and seasoned oak, and then it had been aged. So all of those things then amount up to
a delicious
wine. Now that Maria Chardonnay that you also mentioned was also from 2 different regions. So it's from the cool climate in Tumbarumba, which makes grows outstanding Chardonnay. And it also had Hunter Valley. So you had that leanness and that beautiful acidity, but then you had the richness of the Hunter Valley fruit. So to me, that all adds up to a beautiful wine.
It was.
What about you? Talk to me about Chardonnay. You mentioned you didn't like Chardonnay.
I did not like Chardonnay.
What turned you?
A couple of little things. I think if you look at this bottle even, I didn't understand. Like I used to seriously look at a bottle and go, I thought, because it was a green tinged bottle, I thought the wine inside was going to be very yellow.
Oh,
because
interesting.
Again, the older style. So again, I just didn't have the education. I didn't have the knowledge.
Interesting.
I didn't understand why you would put a Chardonnay into a dark bottle, whereas being a Sauv Blanc drinker at the time, it was always very clear. I could see the wine. I could see that it was very clear. So yeah, that was one of the biggest things honestly, one of the biggest things I learned is like, oh, why are we putting it in such dark green bottles?
Okay.
And in fact, you know, there's an argument that we should go even to the more darker bottle again. So yeah, it's interesting.
I think, and the wine that we're talking about, if you're listening to this, is that we're talking about the Alessandro Reserve Chardonnay, which is actually in a claret bottle. over a Burgundy bottle. So Burgundy bottle is the bottle that has the fat bottom on it, and the claret bottle is the tall skinny one. Okay, so this isn't actually in a traditional bottle. That doesn't mean it's not delicious. It's just the style of, so colour of the bottle is one thing. You generally wouldn't see a Chardonnay in a flint bottle, which is a clear bottle. They generally are a darker glass, but then you've got variations of the colour of glass, which doesn't necessarily impact the
content at all.
Content. It's actually more about marketing and how it works in with the branding. And again, we don't have the typical restrictions in Australia, say France. So we can do whatever we like, which is why this bottle is in a claret bottle, because it looks good and it goes with the Alessandro collection.
Fits in beautifully.
Finally, I'm going to talk about stemware, Wendy.
Talk about stemware.
So this glass, again, if you're watching this podcast, you'll see that I've got my favourite glass out again. This is actually a Chardonnay / Pinot glass. And you can see here it's actually got a bowl. It's got a nice wide bowl and it's got a narrower top. So this is perfect for opening up the flavour of the wine, and it also directs it to certain parts of your mouth to enhance the flavour of it. There are the fishbowl wines, and at Sadler's, you've got the fishbowl. I'm not a big fan of those personally. Like for me, they're designed for big, rich, oaky style of Chardonnay. However, they still are fabulous. I just have a preference for these ones.
It's like wine, honey. Everyone has their preference, and we should always go with what our preferences are.
Yeah,
without any anything. So you enjoy this glass.
I will. I am very much so. So there you go. Anything but Chardonnay. If you're not a Chardonnay drinker and you would like to experience the transformation,
come to. We're doing a flight. Like you said, we have 6 Chardonnays,
all very different styles.
6 Chardonnays, right from a what we named after Franco, because he loves the Chablis style, all the way right through to our Langhorne Creek Chardonnay,
the Equus. Now so that's got American oak and it's got malolactic fermentation. That needs age. And thinking of age with wines and Chardonnay, I love my Chardonnays aged between 4 and 6 years. That's my sweet spot.
I think Chardonnay, I think, absolutely. But I think of that Maria, which was sitting at 6 years now, is just right on for me.
And that's a well-made Chardonnay.
It's
will
beautiful.
Last that way.
It's beautiful. So what are some of the key things that somebody can look at for Chardonnay then, that they're going to say, well, yep, that's going to be a full-bodied, a buttery? What is the key things? Because if here you just look at here and it just says Chardonnay. So what are the things I'm looking for in the back label, honey, to tell me?
I look for, first of all, the region, and you generally find the region on the front. So the region will tell me the style that will help give me an idea, an indication of the style of Chardonnay. If I think it's, say, from Tasmania, Tumbarumba, as I mentioned, they're cooler climates, so I would expect it to be a lot more higher in acid, so you can expect more of those minerally flavours. If I was going for Hunter, and I love Hunter Chardy, I love it. I really do. You can smell it in the glass. It's sunshine in a glass, really.
Is what we're known for, isn't it? One of the big,
absolutely.
Big varietals.
And so region will indicate the style of wine. And then on the back label, it will also generally tell you what style of oak it's been matured in, if at all. And if it refers to like stainless steel, that means that it's not going to have that influence of oak. And so you'll often see a combination. So they might use older oak and seasoned oak versus newer oak. Newer oak is going to be more pronounced. I also look for words like puncheon, hogshead, anything to do with the oak of how it's matured, because that will also give me an idea of one, that it's actually not teabagged, that it's actually matured in oak. And I look for things like if it's got malolactic fermentation in it, I can expect to have a more buttery, bigger style of Chardonnay. So if you like leaner style, don't go for that.
Yeah, go for the stainless steel.
We were
Maybe.
in New Zealand in April, and one of the things that I noticed, again, cool climate in Central Otago, leaner styles, but they used a lot of malolactic fermentation, again, to build up the flavour and complexity in the wine.
Yes.
So batonnage or lees stirring is another buzzword to look out for, because therefore you can think about, like, I look for Chardonnay that's balanced, I look for Chardonnay that's got complexity, and I look for Chardonnay that's got texture.
So much to learn.
Chardonnay's like, it's fun. I love it. It goes well with so many different cuisines. So you can have anything from freshly shucked oysters right through to a steak with these wines. Chardonnay's back, baby.
Hello.
Always pour Chardonnay.
Always pour Chardonnay.
Cheers to that. See you in the next episode.
See you then.